This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
All right, this chapter is headed Other Costing Issues. And there are three separate things we're going to look at. They're fairly short, it shouldn't take us too long, and there are no numbers involved. And so although I'll explain each of the three, as usual, I'm not going to read every word to you. So although hopefully it'll make sense when I finish talking, do read the whole chapter properly. There's not a lot there. Anyway, the first of the three things is what we call digital products. And what we're referring to is the fact that more and more these days, products or services that used to be delivered physically are now more and more being delivered online, digitally. You can view online, you can download online. Things like, you'll see there, online courses. You know, you're watching this, it's obviously an online course. It's not so long ago where if you wanted a course, you would have to go to a physical lecture room and listen to somebody stood there talking, delivered physically as opposed to online digitally. Apps, fairly obviously. So many things you can just download now, which obviously you couldn't do in years gone by. E-books, another obvious one. Used to be the case where a book you'd no choice but to buy a hard copy. Now, obviously, you can download books. You're getting them digitally. Software, graphics, downloadable music. You know, how many people these days still buy hard copy records, CDs, when the majority of people are just downloading from the internet? So that's what we're talking about. And with reference to the costing of them, it's that much harder to do ordinary standard costing on digital products than it is with a physical product. You know, if you're actually making something, if you're making a book, we can cost out the cost per book in a normal way. It's not really appropriate to a digital one. There are costs involved, we'll discuss in a minute, but it's not, in a sense, a cost per book, because once it's there, you're not keep redoing it as you are with hard copies. And there it's inappropriate because the marginal costs such as materials are likely to be zero. Clearly, hard copies, there's paper involved in each copy. That's not the case with soft copies online. The lifespan uncertain. Sometimes as short as a day. I think about these courses. That our course, what I'm doing now, will stay online until the syllabus changes. And that may be uncertain when they're next going to change the syllabus, but you know, the lifespan is how many years it is before they change the syllabus. On the other hand, were this a live lecture, well, its lifespan is very short. Were it live, I deliver the lecture, that's it. Game over, so to speak. Overheads and the drivers difficult to identify. There's always an element of difficulty identifying overheads, but it's more the case when it's digital. Rapid changes in technology can affect costs and so on. And they can evolve over different accounting periods. They like to have very large upfront costs. You know, we've got a lot of costs involved in producing this course, but later the costs change completely. There may be royalties, there's testing, there's obviously marketing. So completely different type of cost involved. There's a little exercise there. He said, suggest some costs which might be involved in creating a digital audio book. And can you suggest any costs which might be saved in comparison to the manufacture of physical books? Now, specifically here says audio books, And you can download audiobooks online, or you can buy them online. Again, until not that many years ago, it depends whether you're as old as me or not, but you could get audiobooks, but they came as tapes or CDs. It was a physical product. So those audiobooks, very similar to ordinary textbooks. You used to have to buy a hard copy. Now, of course, you can buy soft copies. You can get them online. Well, what costs might be involved, first of all, in creating them? So forget any comparison. The sorts of costs involved. You've got the upfront recording costs. I said a minute ago, you'd only record the book once, but there's obviously going to be expense involved. You've got the software costs. Both whatever software we need to be able to record and upload the recording, but also the expertise, the cost of the people involved in doing it. Potentially royalties. The author of the book, in the first place, will expect royalties from our sales. Marketing. IT costs for future updates as technology changes. So, a lot of those costs obviously are similar to the costs of producing hard copies, tapes or CDs. You'd have the recording, the software, not the software, the royalties, the marketing. And more importantly though, what about savings there are likely to be? Well, of course, there are two huge savings. One is the material costs. Whether it's printed books as opposed to audio, there you have the cost of materials, the paper. With audio books, if you were selling tapes or CDs, clearly there's a cost involved each time, the material cost for the tape or the CD. Storage costs can be a really significant saving, that when you're selling hard copy tapes or CDs, clearly there's the cost of storing them in a warehouse. And delivery or transportation costs. They disappear surely almost completely. I say almost because there's a cost of maintaining the website where people are downloading them, but you've not got all the postage or whatever costs delivering these tapes or CDs to customers. So I don't think there's much there, just to be aware of what it is we're talking about. Why normal costing isn't perhaps as appropriate, normal standard costing. As I say, big upfront costs and then completely different costs in the future. But anyway, there we are. All right, I said there were three things we were going to look at in this chapter. The second, if I can turn the page, as you'll see on the next page, is something called the cost transformation model. Now, I'm not going to draw that picture. You'll see in the notes there is that picture there with 6 linked items on it. I'm not going to attempt to draw that on the screen, but the association's cost transformation model suggests the businesses really need to make 6 changes to retain and achieve competitiveness, cost competitiveness. And you'll see there are made a few notes about each of the 6 things, and the rest of the page, top of the next page. So I've already said read them yourself properly, but just let me explain what each of them is. If we want to stay competitiveness, we want clearly to keep costs down as much as we can. We need to create a cost-conscious culture. If I can spell it, there we are. Conscious culture. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I think common sense tells us we need to always be looking at ways of keeping costs down, of cutting costs. And it needs to be throughout the organisation. We need a culture within the company where everybody's aware of the need to keep costs down and looking for ways in which we can save money. We should strive for cost leadership. If we can get our costs lower than our competitors, we can either make more money or we can make more money by reducing our selling price and selling more. And of course, we need to look at whatever technology is available to help us cut costs. So in no particular order, that's the first of the 6 things in this model, what companies need to be achieving. Secondly, understanding cost drivers. We discussed this quite a bit when we looked in an earlier chapter at activity-based costing. We need to find out, we need to identify what's causing our costs. And the more we understand what's causing our costs, the more we can look to ways of being more efficient and reducing costs. Now, to go on there, I think is unnecessary because of what we did discuss when we looked at activity-based. Managing risks. Although, as I said, I've already said, we always need to be looking for ways of reducing costs. But it's important we're aware of the risks involved. You know, there's one obvious danger, I think, is that if we cut costs too much, we may end up, as a result, reducing the quality of whatever it is we're producing. And if quality suffers, then, of course, we risk losing customer satisfaction and losing business. So we've got to be careful. We want to keep costs down, but at the same time, we need to think about the risk involved and make sure that we're not losing customers as a result. Fourthly, connecting products with profitability. Again, in a sense, it's almost stating the obvious. We always want to be making sure that each of our products or services are profitable. Not just look at everything overall, consider each thing we're producing separately. And that does present one, I think, obvious problem, that if you are producing several products or services, many of the costs involved will be shared. And so, if we're going to make sure that each of our products or services is individually profitable, we need to be very careful about how we allocate shared costs between them. Over the page, we want to look to maximise value from new products. That again, I think is stating the obvious. That if we're going to produce a new product, we want to make sure that it's going to be profitable before we start producing. We need to assess the profitability first. And, only if we're fairly confident it's going to be profitable, should we continue with this new product. We should also aim for new products, services to be adaptable or flexible. What we're getting at there is different types of customers often require different things from what we're offering. And so the more any new product or new service, the more it can be designed in that it can be adapted to what these customers want, to what those customers want, then potentially the more successful it's going to be. And finally, incorporate sustainability. And the environmental impact of products. More and more potential customers are concerned about the environmental impact of businesses they're dealing with. And we need to take that into account if we're going to retain our customers, attract customers, that we need to be thinking about the environmental impact. And for two reasons. Not only, I mean, an example there is waste. If we're creating unnecessary waste, then not only might our customers be unhappy because we're not being environmentally friendly, but waste itself is costing us money. If we're wasting a lot of our materials, then it's wasting money. So the more we can cut down waste, the more it saves us money. But at the same time, the more we're not upsetting our customers. Okay, finally, of the three things I said we were going to chat about in this chapter, digital costing systems. Costing has become a lot more complicated than it used to be, when I was young. Because products are a lot more complex. Think of a car manufacturer. The number of different items that go into manufacturing a car is quite enormous, and they're bought from different sources. A car manufacturer is, buying the wheels from one place and buying the radio from another place and so on. There are so many different inputs these days, all of which need costing if we're going to cost out the car ultimately and decide on a selling price. And so as products have become so much more complex, the costings become a lot more difficult. And that's why digital costing systems are coming to being, where you've got software where it's input, it's collecting real-time costs of all the different parts involved and programmed to what you might call put them all together to do our costing for us. And it's a combination of using technology to bring together all these different costs, because there are so many parts involved, and also doing it in real time. It's no good these days looking back at, what did we pay for this last year? Costs are changing all the time. And so the more these different costs can be collected and collated, put together, then the better. So that's what we mean by it, and I think I've said most of what's typed there. But as I said at the beginning, do have a read through. And finally, there is a mention there of target costing. Now, it's in later exams where you'll learn about this properly, and I won't show you the numbers. But with target costing, basically what it is, in the old days, when there wasn't so much competition, it used to be very much, if we were creating a new product, that we'd budget how much it was going to cost us. It's going to cost us $50 to make per unit. And then we'd add on a profit margin. We want 20% profit, so it's costing 50. If we're going to add on 20% profit margin, we'll sell it for 60. And it used to be very much the way selling prices were fixed. And in the old days, when there wasn't the degree of competition there is now, Fine, charge 60 and customers would probably pay 60. But of course now with more and more competition, the danger is twofold. One is that customers may not be prepared to pay 60. Competitors are charging less. And secondly, if they are prepared to pay this, there's no incentive to cut costs. Oh, why cut costs? Because if I manage to bring the cost down to 40, and we add on 20%, 48, well, there's no incentive. We end up making less profit. Now, it's a bit over basic, I appreciate. But more and more these days, people are doing it the other way around. They're saying, what realistically can we sell the product for? I make desks. How much will people pay for the type of desk I'm making? I'll look at the competition and see what they're charging. And I'll say, well, realistically, perhaps people will pay $50 a desk. And then I'll say, well, how much profit do I want to make? Maybe I'm happy with $10 profit. And if we're going to be able to charge 50 and make $10 profit, how much does the cost have to be? The cost will have to be less than 40. As long as I can get the cost of making a desk to be 40 or less, then we'll make the profit we want. And so we then go about, let's look how much it's going to cost to make. Can I get the cost per unit to be 40 or less? Maybe at the moment it looks as though it's going to cost more. Well, could I use some different material or a different supplier and get it a bit cheaper? But I'll do anything I can to get a cost of 40 or less, because then I can make the profit I want. Now that's target costing. To start with a realistic selling price and let that determine our target cost. 40 is our target. We've got to find a way of getting the cost 40 or less. Anyway, I've said more than's needed, to be honest, for this paper. It's in later papers where you can guess numbers, but that's the idea of it. And of course, digital costing systems. The more we know what the costs are in real time, the more we can use the software to help us find ways of getting the cost down to the target.